everyone. Hello, everyone. Well, thank you all very much for your patience this morning. We have like this wedding table up the front, as you can see, for the day. So we've got a lot of speakers for the day, so we're really hoping to flow it really well, so hopefully that all works. So my name's Shyla, I'm the CEO of Palliative Care South Australia, and this is Adam from SA Health, who I suspect most of you are aware of. So Adam and I are co-hosting today, and we're delighted for everyone to come here for our showcase of these important activities from the SA government grants, but also some of the community activities happening in palliative care as well. So we'll start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land of where we meet today on the Kaurna country and recognise elders past, present and emerging. Also to acknowledge anyone in this room with First Nations heritage, and also to consider any sad news or sorry business happening on the lands and seas around us as well. Over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So a little bit of housekeeping. So we have a lot of speakers today, so pretty fast-paced program. Look, we did it online yesterday and it actually kind of worked, so at least today we don't have to make sure, is my microphone working? Can you hear me? So, but of course be patient as we try and transition through all of the different presentations. If you have Q&A, look, sometimes you can sneak in a question at the end, but we do have a lot to get through, so we'll also try and grab a chance to talk to the speakers during the morning tea and the lunch break and the afternoon tea break. And we'll be recording and we'll be sharing this on the PCSA's YouTube channel. The toilets are just through the corridor there, as is the coffee, but we will have some other refreshments, coffee and morning tea, etc. And the coffee will be served, and if you want to go up during the day from 9 o'clock, it'll just be over there. So please just feel free to quietly get up as we go, because we've got a lot of speakers and need to stay refreshed and hydrated, and coffee's probably not the way to do that, but that's fine. Okay, now where's the button? Here we go. The purpose of today, well, really it's about showcasing you guys, showcasing the amazing work across all these organisations. We had the policy summit yesterday, and so between that agenda and this agenda, you actually just see the breadth of organisations that are working in the end-of-life space. The last few years, we have just seen projects popping up absolutely everywhere, public, private, in the community, really driven from the ground up, from the top down. The federal government's been investing, the state government's been investing, we've got the PHNs in this space. We've just kind of got everybody coming together with these projects. So today we really want to celebrate some of those things. We want to share what we've been up to, because too often we know that these things happen and not everybody knows what's going on. We want to learn from each other and have the opportunity to network. So, make sure you meet somebody new today and introduce yourself. The trigger then was really the 2022 grants program. This was the second one that the state government had run. So I think all up, we've managed to have 40 different projects occur over the 2 rounds of the grants project. And in 2021, we did a celebration similar to this, but COVID related, so it was online. But now we're here to be able to be face-to-face and celebrate these projects. And we can just hear from the amazing work they actually are able to unlock when you give the community and non-government organisations the chance to come up with new ideas and test them out. But then it's so much broader than that as well. So we couldn't help but take the opportunity to throw in some other people, like some of the work we've been doing in advanced care planning with local councils, some of the work we've been doing with in the older person space with COTA and Office for Ageing Well. So really, when combined with the organisations yesterday, what a force, what a force we have here in all of these organisations and all of these committed people to do some amazing stuff. So I look forward to celebrating that with you today.
So it's a jam-packed program, and you've got it on your slide there. Please don't look at the timing, because that's going to be adjusting slightly. Like we mentioned, we're starting a little bit later. The food, I guarantee, will still happen at those times. So we'll work it out. We'll work it all out together in that space. You can see it's a huge number of people doing amazing things. So instead of us talking about and giving biographies for everyone that comes through, you'll see them briefly up on the screen, and we'll be sharing this slide deck with you all as well. So you'll see everyone's background and stories that way. But we thought it's more important for everyone to talk about what they're actually doing in this space, which is what you've come to hear. So it's going to start off with what we're calling speed talks, a little bit like speed dating, but we've got the speed talks happening with there. And then in the afternoon, we're going to go into what we're calling deep dive sessions on each of the tables. The tables are repeated, so you can go to 2 sessions. There's 2 20-minute sessions, 2 different areas that you like to talk about, and we'll look at discussing sort of what's the priorities here, what's working, what's not working here well, how do we work together, and how do we move forward these different actions that are happening. We really want to take the work of all these amazing projects and bring it forward. How can we actually keep this going? Because there's not much point in a project stopping. How do we keep the sustainability of this movement going in this space? So that's what this afternoon session is. We'll then wrap that up by talking and giving a summary of all of that to everyone, and you'll get a copy of all this as well, so everyone can utilise that. So I'd just like to also flag, we are a very important day today. We're launching a brand new booklet in collaboration with Carers SA. So hopefully you've all got a copy of this. This is the South Australian version of the palliative caring booklet, available for carers and community members. It will be available to download for free, and we've got a certain number pre-printed, but it's a fantastic booklet. It's actually available in every other jurisdiction in Australia. We've localised this booklet. There's been a great team for many years doing this work. So this is a great little booklet, and so congratulations on the launch of this today. Why not? Hot off the press for everyone. All right. Now, the Minister unfortunately couldn't make it today. He was meant to do a video for us, but unfortunately got unwell. So I don't know about the Health Minister being unwell, but anyway, we won't go there. So Adam's going to just read out his speech on his behalf.
Thank you, Shyla. So yeah, look, the Minister for Health and Wellbeing is grateful to have the opportunity to provide this to you today, but as Shyla just said, he's been really unwell, was hoping to record the video, and so of course sends his apologies for not being here. I'll do my best to impersonate him. This is probably the closest I'll ever get to being the Minister for Health and Wellbeing. We've obviously all had a joke about what kind of things I could slip into the speech to announce today. I'm probably not going to do that because I value my job. But I have gone through the speech and just tried to make it, the sort of third person thing. So if that slips up, forgive me. On behalf of the Minister for Health and Wellbeing, I'd first like to start just by acknowledging the traditional lands of the Gunner people and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Minister for Health and Wellbeing would like to thank Palliative Care SA for partnering with SA Health to bring the Palliative Care Policy Summit and Project Showcase together. The showcase is a celebration of the hard work and compassionate care provided by so many nurses, doctors, allied health professionals, carers, and everybody else involved in this space. And so the Minister for Health and Wellbeing thanks you guys for everything that you're doing for the benefit of South Australia's community. These events are a great way to share information, promote best practice, and celebrate the outcomes of a broad range of projects happening all over South Australia. So 12 of the projects you'll hear about today are through this showcase were funded by the Palliative Care Grants 2022 program. The grants program provides that grant funding to pilot projects in non-government organisations to improve community access to palliative care and to trial new ideas to diversify care options for people at end of life. What this has really demonstrated is high-quality palliative care and support reaches beyond the hospital and beyond the hospice to community groups, primary care services, residential aged care facilities and in people's homes. The project's also demonstrated how big changes can grow from small beginnings, and I always pick on this, Helen, but the Palliative Care Pharmacist Home Service in Regional SA project, which was delivered by the Pharmaceutical Society of SA, had a grant to get up this trial and pilot this idea, and that's just recently been picked up. And I won't say any more because I don't want to steal your thunder for your okay. If it was the minister, I'd give him the right to, shine in the amazing work that these guys have done. But the Minister for Health congratulates the team on the tremendous outcomes that you guys have achieved. The state government understands the important role of pharmacists in the provision of end-of-life care, and that's why they've been seeking to improve access to palliative care medicines through community pharmacies to allow people approaching end of life to access the treatment they need at home. And so the Department of Health and Wellbeing is partnering with pharmacies to establish a network of community pharmacies across South Australia to provide palliative care medicines and support people with a life-limiting illness over the next 3 years. The state government's also committed $5.1 million to recruiting 10 new palliative care nurses as part of their commitment to deliver 76 more nurses in areas of need. Our team actually does the reporting back to the government on this, and so we know that we have 9.3 FT of those 10 committed and people on the ground working, and there's just one last fractional position of a level 4 nurse that they're trying to get. But they're all in regional South Australia, which I think is an amazing outcome because, obviously that's an area where we definitely want to see that investment. You may have also seen the recent media about the partnership between the state government and the federal government for the Palliative Care Navigation Pilot Program. Palliative care navigators will be employed to connect terminally ill patients with local palliative care services in a 3-year, $7.5 million pilot program, both in Adelaide and in regional South Australian centres. As well as navigators who are going to help individual patients connect to services. We'll also look at things like a phone line, a website offering information, improved volunteer coordination and access to bereavement supports. The pilot project aims to increase palliative care services in the community by giving people better information and being able to connect them for a smoother transition between types of care and better support end-of-life pathways. To complement that project's investment in the bereavement space, the state government has also recently partnered with the Hospital Research Foundation to jointly fund a feasibility study for a statewide centre for grief and bereavement in South Australia. So we've just recently commissioned the University of South Australia and the advisory firm BDO to conduct this analysis over the next 12 months with a focus on the supports available within communities and the normalisation of grief and bereavement as a human and social phenomenon. The state government has also tasked the Health Performance Council of South Australia to undertake an inquiry into the provision of palliative care services. And as many of you will know from working in this space over time, this has been a rolling thing with the Health Performance Council, and so we're really looking forward to what they bring from their next report. They've also invited people to share their knowledge and experience about best practice models, and so I encourage everybody to jump onto the website for Health Performance Council, which are accepting submissions up until the 28th of July. Today you'll see some of the breadth of the innovative and compassionate work that's occurring to improve end-of-life services across the community. So the Minister for Health and Wellbeing again wants to thank you all and hopes you find today a very rewarding celebration of your efforts. Thank you.
So not much going on really, is there? It's pretty hard to keep on top of it even when you're in this space. So it's exciting. Palliative care is finally on the agenda on lots of angles, and we learnt yesterday from a national level as well. It's really becoming more high profile, which we need it to be. But now it's about working together, learning what's out there, stopping to reinvent the wheel, but collaborating. So hopefully today you'll learn of different projects happening, and at morning tea and lunchtime really connect with those people so you can look at how you can integrate and continue these conversations in different ways. All right, well, let's get started. It's going to be a rolling group, so let's just hope this all works. All right, so these are the first sessions. So these are the first group coming through. I'll let each of them introduce themselves, and then the next one will come through after that. So look at this great lineup coming here. Over to you first, Helen.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm Helen Stone. I'm from the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia. We're the peak body for pharmacists, which means that we represent pharmacists wherever pharmacists are, and we live and breathe the mantra that there should be a pharmacist wherever medicines are used. And for a number of years, we've been really looking at the value of a pharmacist in palliative care teams. We've been involved in projects around access to palliative care medicines. And for those you're aware of the recent challenges with the announcement that Ordine was going to be discontinued from the Australian market, PSA is advocating as hard as we can with a TGA to find a solution for Australians right across the country. So that's a little bit about what we are doing. Let me remember to actually change the slides, having annoyed Shyla with last-minute changes. So this is the third and fourth of our grants through this program. The first one was hijacked by COVID. We were aiming to bring together regional palliative care workers into sort of local communities of practice, and of course in COVID we couldn't do that. So we turned it into online learning instead and made that available through the networks. Our second project, we had a pharmacist who was embedded in aged care in the Barossa Valley. And it seemed to us that aged care and palliative care should go hand in hand, and every pharmacist, every healthcare worker, every worker within aged care should have an understanding of palliative care. So we approached the CEO of the aged care home, and he was delighted to come on board. Our pharmacists went through a pepper placement, which we would highly recommend. They were fantastic. And so then he brought that perspective to his work in the aged care setting. So then when the next opportunity came to have a grant, we then went, well, actually, where else are people with palliative care needs? They're also in their own homes, and they're in Aboriginal health services. We also put in a proposal around pharmacists in disability care as well for palliative care. We got 2 of the 3, so home service and Aboriginal health. So this particular project, working on Aboriginal Health Service, we had Kylie, who'd been working already with the Port Lincoln Aboriginal Health Service. They came to us. Kylie was known to the community and trusted by the people that worked at PLAS. So we asked Kylie if she would take on this role of a palliative care pharmacist for Aboriginal Health Service. And we knew right from the very beginning that this was going to be hard. Nothing about what we were proposing was going to be easy, and so it has shown to be. The role of the pharmacist in these kind of settings is very different to what you might be used to seeing a pharmacist do. So you're used to seeing pharmacists in a hospital setting, in a ward, or you're used to seeing a community pharmacist dispensing medicines. These pharmacists are not about supply. These pharmacists are about working collaboratively with their GPs, with the nurses, with the other care staff, with families, with carers, and of course with people themselves. So they're very much dependent on a trusted relationship. So we already had that with Kylie. So let me take you through a couple of case studies to show you. Oh, hang on, before I get to the case studies. Ooh, colours don't translate well. Okay, so we tracked what the pharmacists were doing in both of our both of our projects. Let me find the little button. And so it kind of goes that one, then that one, then that one, then that one. And there's a vague hint of colour in this. Okay, so relationship building and establishing a network was this one. Then it was this one, and then here, and then here. So you can see at the start of the program, it was all about building relationships. But then the light blue section, which doesn't even figure up here, became half of the pharmacist's activity at the end. So this is medication consultations with people. This other section here is case conferences. So the number of case conferences also increased over time as well. There were education sessions for the staff as well, and they also increased. So we showed that the pharmacists spent their time at the beginning kind of setting up their network, showing what they could do, and then as the project went on, they were more accepted by people and spent more of their time really working with people and with families. So, now to some case studies. So this is the first one. I know it's hard to read, but hopefully you'll be able to see it better when you get the slides when they're shared at the end. So this one for us really showed the complex nature of this family. I've got new glasses, so it's all a little blur for me. Hang on, I can read that one. Let's do this. I can read this one. So I got timing of getting new glasses was like yesterday, so I'm all a little bit at sea. All right, so Sue is an 81-year-old Aboriginal lady living at home with her husband, and her husband's a carer. She's got a medical history of type 2 diabetes, CKD, hypertension and asthma. And so this lady had met Kylie about 12 months ago. Sue's also got a son with an intellectual disability. And so Sue's family's been away, she's had a fall, and then she's had an infection related to the fall and a fracture. And then her condition deteriorates and on it goes. And so Kylie's actually gone to the home to do a home medicines review for the husband, not for Sue. But that was a sort of trigger for the family to go, oh, we know you. We know what you do and who you are to us. And so then the GP arranged a palliative care visit for Sue, and that was much more acceptable to the family because they'd met Kylie before. So this took a long time for Kylie to be involved with the family to build that trust and that connection. And Kylie was able to then advocate for transitions of care, and because this involved a remote community, there was the GP involved, there were 2 hospitals involved, it really became quite challenging, but Kylie all the way through was able to make sure that her medication needs were taken care of. So this next case, which might be a little bit easier to read, is actually quite a young man. He's only 28, and he's presented with suicide ideation. And so he has also quite a complex medical history for such a young man. And there was an interdisciplinary team involved that involved the pharmacist as well. And so Kylie was able to liaise across the cardiologist, nephrologist, mental health care team, pathology team, local health clinician to come up with a plan working with the patient about what he was going to do with his ongoing care. And she was able to build an ongoing relationship with Cohen. She worked hard with him to encourage him to take his medicines as he needed to, gave him a dose administration aid to make it a little bit less complex for him, and made sure that he had access to the prescriptions, and there was an ongoing plan about his medicines. So the question for this one was really, where does palliative care start? So this young man had a life-limiting diagnosis. His health wasn't great. But actually what we found was happening in this community is that people were coming to the palliative care team for end-of-life business. It was too late for Kylie as a pharmacist to really build that trust in the relationship. So in the end, we took the palliative out of her title and just said, just go back to what you've been doing as a pharmacist and build those relationships and work with your people. So this goes back to another project that PSA has been running. Now I've broken that. that's called Integrating Pharmacists into Aboriginal Community-Controlled Organisations. This was a project that was run across 3 states, or 2 states and a territory, and it was funded under the 6th Community Pharmacy Agreement, and it's currently under MSAT consideration. It has been sitting with MSAT for quite some time. What we did was we put a pharmacist in every single ARCHO that we could under that funding. So we know it works. We're very confident that what will come out of that report when it's finally released is extremely positive. So what else did we do? We partnered with NACCHO to put together a 7-module learning piece that was co-designed with NACCHO that prepares pharmacists to work in ARCHOs or in Aboriginal health services. And that is freely available through both PSA and through NACCHO. So where does this lead to? This leads to a recommendation that every single ARCHO, every single Aboriginal health service should be funded to include a pharmacist as part of their team. We've stepped back from saying that that should be a palliative care pharmacist because it's too hard to come in so late to build the relationship and build the trust. We actually need to get to them earlier, and we know that about palliative care. But for us, we found that that word palliative was a huge barrier for Kylie. So we said, just be a pharmacist, build those relationships, work with the people. But what it actually said to us is that we need this to start now. We need this to be ongoing. We need Kylie's position to be ongoing. So this project hasn't completed yet. We had an extension because it's taking us so long to build that that engagement with the community. But that's, if I could have one thing that changed out of this project, it would be those ongoing positions for a pharmacist in every single ARCHO. And that is that one.
Thank you, Helen. What a wonderful project. All right, so I'm the next speaker. I'm Michelle Oliver. I'm the Manager of Professional Practice at Occupational Therapy Australia, and I'm an OT myself. So before I get started, I'd just like to also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we meet on today, the Kaurna people, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. So a little bit about OT Australia before I get into our project. So as Australia's Professional Association for Occupational Therapy, OTA fosters evidence-based practice, enables lifelong learning and promotes the future of occupational therapy. So OTA exists to support occupational therapists to support their communities. So our project was probably a little bit smaller, so we might make up a bit of time this morning with my presentation because it is short, but it was a smaller project, but it was a really important project and probably a bit of a first step for us in this space. So what we identified at OTA was that we didn't have any specific learning and development opportunities for OTs developed by OTs to support them in the area of practice of palliative care. We're really wanting to understand and unpack that a little bit more, but I guess the main priority was about supporting that pathway for OTs into the palliative care or end-of-life support, and then also something that was going to be more sustainable. So previously OTA have run predominantly 1 day, 2 day, 3 day workshops face-to-face. Obviously COVID changed that for us, so we've had to really rethink how we offer ongoing learning and development for occupational therapists in all areas of practice. But also recognising the importance of having very specific, tailored learning and development that's specific to the state and territory, and obviously the area of practice. So we did propose initially to have a 3-part webinar series to support OTs, where we would host it live and then we would record it and make it available on our library. Through further engagement with our learning and development team and with the profession, we actually identified that people were wanting to have a resource that they can do within their own time, but also that it was reflective, so they could engage in a learning and development activity, go back to their workplace, engage with their supervisors, do that reflective piece. So it was more self-driven and reflective. So we did pivot a little bit and looked at developing pretty early on in the piece. Looked at developing an e-learning and development resource. So we changed from a 3-part webinar series to a 3-part online learning and development resource. So the idea was to support, as I said, the pathway for OTs into the area of palliative care. So it was really targeting the early career OT, or also OTs who are kind of looking at shifting their area of practice. So we wanted to build the foundational capabilities for OTs in palliative care. And once again, we also wanted to build something that was sustainable, that wasn't just a once-off, there's something that could be accessed ongoing. So just a little bit, before I talk about the outcome of the project, just a little bit about the important role OTs play in the palliative care space, or supporting people at end of life. So OTs are really, really important, but often are not well understood. So occupational therapists work with all individuals, or any individual with an illness, injury, or a disability that is affecting or impacting on their ability to engage in day-to-day activities. So I guess it's even more important at end of life, being able to support people to maintain a level of independence or choice around their engagement in their day-to-day activities. So whether it be around, self-care, hygiene, mobility. We also know that at end of life, that can change quite rapidly. So the role of an OT is incredibly important to be engaged and constantly doing that reassessment, assessment, and reshifting and shifting, changing environmental factors, or providing equipment to enable that person to maintain or engage in their meaningful occupations or activities. So OTs take a person-centred approach to all areas of practice, and palliative care certainly no exception. So as individuals' desires to participate in valued and essential occupations does not diminish at end of life, in fact it does intensify. So OTs are an important role in the support team in the palliative care space to enable ongoing participation in optimising function and management of symptoms. Okay, so as I said, we did pivot early on. We were lucky enough to work with 2 amazing South Australian OTs that work in the palliative care space to build our learning and development modules. So we started off, we've got, as I said, 3 consecutive modules. The first one really focuses on the introduction to the palliative care space. It does have a specific focus on South Australia, but it can be applicable across other states and territories. The second module then kind of goes a little bit deeper into the specific role of OT, so focusing, it's got some more practical sessions, so focusing more around home modifications, equipment, and provide some case studies, etc. And then the third, really, while it still focuses and supports that early career OT, it is also applicable kind of to your mid or more advanced OT, and that's really looking around the ethical considerations and clinical reasoning for OTs through a palliative lens. So we're really excited to have launched these modules just recently. They've gone live. So we had the wonderful Dr. Deirdre Morgan and Lauren G here from South Australia write our modules. As we're a national association, we did have reach into other states and territories to engage with other lead OTs in this area of practice, but we did land on 2 local SA OTs to write these modules, and they do fantastic work. So Deirdre does a lot of research and has got quite extensive clinical background, and Lauren works in our public health system in the palliative care space, and is incredibly skilled. So yes, as I said, we were lucky. We're really excited that we've launched the modules, and we've had 50 OTs take up or engage in the modules so far. So we're still early on in terms of being able to track the kind of outcome or benefit. They are available on our website and pushed out through our CPD newsletters and through our ongoing communication. The benefit of also having it live on our website is that we've got links to other support, so practice supports, our special interest groups, which we've got an SA-specific special interest group, as well as a national interest group for OTs in the area of this, in this area of practice, as well as other practice supports for OTs working in this area of practice or thinking about transitioning into this area of practice. So I think that that's it for me. It was short, sharp and shiny. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning all. My name's Helen Ho. I am the General Manager at SAPMEA. So SAPMEA, we are the South Australian Postgraduate Medical Education Association. We are a not-for-profit medical education organisation. We develop and deliver medical education activities and programs to all healthcare professionals from medical, nursing and all allied health disciplines. So a number of our education programs are delivered here in South Australia to the South Australian healthcare workforce, but we also do run a national program as well. And so I'll be talking you through our project, which is the Supportive and Palliative Care for Dementia project. Now, before I start, I would firstly like to acknowledge and express my sincere gratitude to the organisations we worked with to deliver this project. We are thankful to SA Health for the opportunity to deliver this project under the 2022 Palliative Care Grant Round, and are thankful for the support and contribution of our project partners, Dementia Australia, Dementia Training Australia and Palliative Care SA for their input during the development and delivery of our project. So our project focused on dementia as a progressive and life-limiting diagnosis. We aim to increase the capacity and capability of the primary healthcare and aged care workforce in providing supportive and palliative care for people living with dementia and for their carers and families. We sought to increase people's understanding of dementia as increase people's understanding of the terminal nature of dementia and to disseminate information on best practice guidelines, on services and referral pathways for providing care at the advanced stages of dementia. So our project consisted of 2 phases, and my colours did slightly come up there. So the first phase was a symposium which we held here at the Adelaide Pavilion in early February, titled Dying Well with Dementia Symposium. So that was a face-to-face education full-day event. And then the second phase, the second part of our project, was an online education and mentoring project titled the Advanced Dementia ECHO Program. And ECHO is an acronym standing for Extension for Community Healthcare Outcomes. It's an online education and mentoring model that's delivered internationally, and it brings together virtual groups of experts who form a panel and community-based practitioners, so those medical, nursing, allied health teams working in community and aged care settings in this case, and bringing them together for online meetings that consist of education delivery as well as case-based discussions. And that's the case discussions really form the crux of what differentiates ECHO from other modalities of education. And so here are some images of our project in delivery. So the symposium we held, we had a fantastic lineup of speakers for the full-day event. We even had Duncan McKellar there, boomed in from Scotland at 4 a.m. his time to deliver a presentation on symptom management in advanced dementia. So we're really fortunate to have some of the key experts and leaders here in South Australia delivering the program. So we had nurse consultant, GP with expertise in dementia, as well as Chloe and Tim, who are 2 out of the 3 dual-trained palliative care consultants and geriatricians in South Australia. And so the Advanced Dementia ECHO started in February following the symposium, and we held fortnightly online meetings, fortnightly for 7 sessions, and we held the final session only 3 weeks ago. As I mentioned, we formed an expert panel for the echo, and as you can see, they're the ones with the background image. And so we had Steph Daly, who's the GP with special interest in dementia. We had Luke Shepherd, a nurse consultant, and again, very fortunate to have this time all three of the dual-trained palliative and geriatrician consultants in South Australia. So having Tina Sickalong on board with the panel as well. So over the next few slides, because our project has now completed, we've got all the data and outcome data from both parts of the project. So over the next few slides, I'll share with you some of the results and outcomes we've been able to achieve. So firstly, with the symposium, we drew quite a bit of interest, particularly, as you can see from the breakdown, from nurses and for those working in the metropolitan Adelaide region. So we specifically held the symposium on a Saturday, and there was no cost to attend, in the hopes that it would make it more accessible and feasible for those in the country locations to be able to attend. So we're hoping to be able to draw a larger audience from the regions. We did achieve 15% attendance from the rural and regional practitioners, but it was lower than what we had originally projected and hoped for with the symposium. But nonetheless, the feedback and response from the symposium participants were really positive. We had a jam-packed program similar to today, and we also invited a number of the dementia and palliative care service providers to come and present and meet with the attendees on the day. So the feedback we received was very positive and highlighted the value in making education opportunities like this available. Everyone who responded to the evaluation said that they gained awareness and knowledge related to best practice, as well as to support services and referral pathways. I've included some direct quotes here from the attendees about what changes that they could identify that they could make to their practice after having attended the symposium. And as I'm not sure if you can see, but in summary, a lot of the comments really focused on changes that they could make to make their practice and approach to practice more person-centred. So there's comments here about, considering spiritual needs, improving end-of-life discussions in all stages of dementia, and better partnerships with family and relatives in the stages and conversations of dementia. So the next couple of slides are looking at the second part, which is the ECHO program. So our original plan with the Advanced Dementia ECHO was to recruit a smaller group to take them through to this second part. However, we received quite a lot of interest from the rural and regional practitioners. And because the symposium didn't reach the number of country practitioners that we had hoped for, we ended up opening up the enrolments for the Advanced Dementia ECHO. So we ended up enrolling 142 people into the program, and had, as mentioned, a significant interest from the country-based practitioners. So 45% of those enrolled were from the rural and regional locations, and which really showed to us that this online format was much more accessible and format for them to receive education and development in that way. So unlike the breakdown for the symposium, would have seen that drew a lot of attendance from nurses. The ECHO program had almost 50% of the enrolments from the medical profession, so the GPs predominantly. There were some international medical graduates as well as medical registrars, forming almost 50% of the enrolments. The second cohort there was nurses, and then third and fourth were pharmacists and OTs, so and as well as a number of other allied health professions. So it really was a multidisciplinary program. And in terms of the large representation of medical practitioners in the ECHO, it is very much aligned with other ECHO programs we have run. And I think it just goes to show that this model of learning with the case-based discussions really is well suited to particularly the medical professionals' preference for style of learning. So some of the outcomes, so our ECHO program consisted of 7 online sessions, and we received 7 cases from GP participants to present for discussion. Now, I know the data looks like it's fudge because it's all 100%, but we really did receive these results. We had overwhelmingly positive feedback from the participants. Everyone agreed that their learning expectations were met. Everyone agreed that this online fortnightly meetings created a collegial and supportive learning environment, and everyone said, if you're going to do this again, we would recommend it to our friends. So. With our evaluation framework, we evaluated knowledge, confidence and quality of care in our outcome survey, and we assess the participants' self-reported levels before and after the participation in the ECHO program. And from left to right is knowledge, confidence and quality of care. And as you can see from before the program in blue to after in what's come up as orange there, there has been an increase in the participant self-rated score, so really showing that the participation in the ECHO program has been able to increase knowledge, confidence, as well as their quality of care. And I love quotes, so here's some quotes from the ECHO participants. And overall, the participants really valued the direct support and feedback from the panel. They valued the opportunity to put forward and present their cases and what they would find challenging. Forward group discussion, they valued the opportunity to contribute to the discussions and shared learning of other people's questions and cases, and also the last comment there, just highlighting that they value the flexibility to jump in and out of the program. So it was 7 sessions, 7 online meetings, and so people came in and out, and so they were able to attend the sessions that they could. The sessions that they didn't make, we recorded all the sessions, so they were able to pick up and watch the recordings and still access those resources. So some learnings from us. So key learnings that SATMEL we've taken away is that there needs to be ongoing availability of education, ongoing investment in upskilling our primary healthcare and aged care workforce in all aspects of palliative care. Our project here focuses on the advanced dementia stages. And that it can be challenging for rural practitioners to access education, particularly if it's face-to-face education delivered in metropolitan Adelaide. And so we really do need to consider innovative and alternative modalities for education and opportunities to really engage the country workforce. Our project showed that the online model, like the ECHO program we delivered, was very well received from the rural regional practitioners, and particularly in this case, the medical practitioners. So as mentioned, all of the education presentations in the ECHO sessions were recorded. They were all made available online with the presentations and all the resources discussed by the panel, and so they continue to be available on our website listed there, and you'll get this presentation following the session today. And so those resources are ongoingly available, and so that's an ongoing resource. We also have a number of other past ECHO programs that we have delivered, and they're continuing available as well, including a palliative care ECHO that we also ran earlier in the year. And so what's next for us? We are continuing to work in this space, so do stay tuned in what we have upcoming in the palliative care and dementia space. That's it from me.
So the Pharmaceutical Society's second project, we have a pharmacist based in the mid-north of South Australia. She had previously worked on our pharmacist in general practice project, and we actually had a few pharmacists that were prepared to work on this project, but we chose Tash. She was very interested to do a pepper placement to work collaboratively with the GPs. She had a really good relationship with the GPs, but the town at the moment also and still doesn't have enough GPs. So she felt very strongly about that continuing collaborative relationship to support the GPs. She lives in that community. She is of the community, and so these are her people that she's caring for. And I think that made a huge difference to the success of this project. So again, this isn't about supply, this is about conversations, relationships and liaison. So one of the stories out of this project that really stays with me is very early on, together with Paul Tate, and I'm sure a number of you know Paul, we had an online meeting with the community PAL Care team in Port Pirie and explained what this project was all about. And the person that we spoke to said, I've just spent 2 days trying to sort out this man's medications. And Tash just very quietly said, I can help with that. The nurse was just like, she just went, oh my God, I can't believe that you're going to give us a pharmacist. Tash is very much a quiet achiever in this space. So, what did she do? Some case studies. So, Bob's an 80-year-old male, and he's been in hospital, but then he's been discharged, and he's having problems accessing his medicines. A lot of his medicines weren't covered on the PBS. So he's spending more than $700 a month on his palliative care medicines. Tash was able to liaise with the Port Pirie Hospital, who actually didn't have a mechanism to provide medicines outside the hospital for palliative care patients. But between the support of the pharmacy at Port Pirie Hospital and Tash's advocacy, they were able to get that medicine supported for this gentleman, which I'm sure you can imagine at $700 a month is a huge, huge benefit for this family, and relieved a whole lot of stress that the family was just so worried about how they were going to keep him at home. The alternative for this gentleman was actually to go into hospital if the family couldn't support that ongoing cost. So the next person to highlight the kind of work that Tash was doing. So this is John. He's an 89-year-old male, and he's got very complex medical history. And he's also just been discharged from hospital. But at 89, with changes in his medication, changes in his health, he was also really concerned about what he was taking. Tash was able to educate him and his wife and liaise between the healthcare settings so that they were both much more comfortable. And he ended up being able to spend more time at home before he died. It was one of those where we had the feedback that they couldn't believe that this service was available in regional South Australia. And the third case is a much younger woman, and she has squamous cell carcinoma at the base of her tongue. And I'll leave you to read the other medical history that she has. But she was very fatigued. She had difficulty speaking, difficulty hearing. She didn't always want more people in her home. And she ended up, having met Tash, she ended up with a lot of her communications via SMS. And that was enough reassurance for this woman about how she was using her medicines and what she should do next. They were able to change her medicines because she was spending, she felt like she was just sleeping through the day. She didn't recognise herself anymore. So the changes to her medicines meant that she was more alert during the day, and she felt like she regained her sense of self. Tash's ongoing support to Linda has meant that she's actually living her life instead of sleeping through this time. the future plans for this woman will be those changing medication needs. With difficulty of swallowing, obviously she'll need to change from oral medications through liquid to patches or injections, and Tash will be there supporting this woman for as long as she needs it. So the pie charts, I've just given you two on this one, just to show that at the start of the project, Tash's time was kind of spent equally between building the network, medicines consultations, case conferencing. The case conferencing started early for Tash because she had that existing relationship with a local GP. But she did quite a lot of education, which is this section over here, early on, because she was establishing that broader network with the community palliative care teams. And she spent time here working with families, and that kind of continued over through here. But you can see this is the end of the project, and this is medicine consultations and case conferencing. So the bulk of her time was spent with medicines consultations and case conferencing. She described one meeting to me where she'd spent 2 hours with the multidisciplinary team working through the complex medications needs for a gentleman, which enabled him to stay at home. And this is a regional community. For one of the gentlemen that she was meeting with, his driveway was 2 kilometres of dirt road. So to have a pharmacist that was able to go and visit them was, it was hugely appreciated, and it was a resource that the community really valued. So alongside this, once this project had started, the University of South Australia actually had a rural researcher stream, and we encouraged strongly Tash to apply for this. I think that was a sort of voluntold moment. I was like, Tash, apply for this. So she applied and she was successful, which meant that she had funding for a day a week as an early researcher. She'd not done research before, and the team led by Kate Gunn at UniSA were fantastic to sort of support her through that research. So it was a qualitative research project, and we sat with UniSA and agreed, you know, who was going to do what, who owned what part of the IP, and we came to a lovely agreement. And that paper is in draft. I've seen the draft. It will be published in the near future, and I think it's been a lovely way for us to publish an amazing project. So, recommendations, and what's actually happened since then. This is the exciting news. So, Tash's role now has been turned into a permanent position funded by the York and Northern Local Health Network at 0.2 FTE. So she's about to commence that. So she will continue to support her community in the palliative care team for the Mid-North. So this is a quote, I also love quotes, from one of the nurses. So she said that the pharmacist has been an essential asset to our team. The pressure she took off our busy service has been a godsend. Her knowledge has improved patient and carer outcomes beyond measure. Every palliative care service needs a pharmacist. And that is actually what we're working towards. We think that every community palliative care service, not only in South Australia but right across Australia, should have an embedded pharmacist as a resource for patients, their carers and family, and the health professionals. This pilot has also directly contributed to PSA being successful with a national palliative care grant. So it's a $1.8 million grant. We are going to develop a palliative care fundamentals learning program. So if you think back to my first presentation, our deadly pharmacists modules that we developed with Nacho, we'll be developing a similar project, but also informed by what we did with deadly pharmacists, but sort of building on that experience and making that available for all pharmacists across Australia. That project will also include funding for 8 pharmacists to build on what we've started here in South Australia. So a little project, a little concept that we had in regional South Australia has now turned into a national project where we're going to be rolling this out right across the country. It'll the next project will be proof of concept, and we will continue to advocate with both state and federal governments right across Australia to embed pharmacists in palliative care services. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Leanne March, and I'm the General Manager of GP Partners Australia. GP Partners is a small not-for-profit organisation, and in everything we do, we aim to support GPs with the latest information, training and resources to enable them to continue to achieve the best possible outcomes for their patients. At the heart of this objective is our commitment to a long-standing relationship with each GP and a continuous investment in models of hospital avoidance and community-based care. My role in this program was the project manager and facilitator, and like Helen, we chose Project ECHO and Enhancing Palliative Care. I too would like to pay respects to country, to elders past, present and emerging, and also very grateful that our project was funded by the grant that we received through the Palliative Care 2022 Grants Program. So we've already been introduced to the model of Project ECHO. As Helen has mentioned, it is the acronym stands for Extension of Community Health Outcomes. It is a virtual knowledge sharing network designed to create a learning loop between health professionals with the aim of increasing knowledge and access to healthcare in local communities. Our project focused on GPs being that our core business, and our clinical objectives were to support and provide education to GPs to help them on how to alleviate the suffering, physical, psychosocial, spiritual of patients and families experiencing serious or life-threatening illness or those who were at the end of their life. We wanted to increase access to evidence-based palliative care and to improve palliative care for patients and their families. And in addition to that, we recognise the need to increase collaborative efforts for all team members and all parts of the palliative team to come together for the benefit of the patient. Project ECHO, a quote, and I'm like Helen, I love quotes as well. Project ECHO provides a way where hospitals doing fantastic stuff can also help communities do fantastic stuff while learning about what they need to do together. And that last part is extremely important, what we need to do together. So we met and formed a Palliative ECHO Network core panel, and extremely grateful to all my team members. They did a fantastic job. Dr. Russell Shute was our specialist GP practitioner who has a long-standing interest in palliative care. Olivia Reigeritz was the specialist palliative care physician, and we had input from pharmacy with Julian Soriano as a palliative pharmacist. Andrew Noble represented the extended care paramedics from specialist services at SA Ambulance, and then my team internally, myself, Naomi and Atif, who looked after our IT needs during the project. We were extremely grateful as well for lots of input across the palliative network from specialists, allied health professionals, nurse practitioners, social workers who came along at each session to present the didactic part of the ECHO series. So as it was already mentioned, ECHO works. It's a relatively short session. All our sessions were conducted in the evening, consisting of a didactic presentation first, which went for about 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and then each GP was encouraged during the sessions to present a case, and that case relevant to the management of a specific patient of theirs. And then after that case, a series of questions were raised, and then a collaborative, discussion then of how best to achieve what that GP may have felt the issue being with managing their patient. So the objectives were, we wanted to increase the number of GPs with training and mentorship in palliative care. We wanted to improve frontline GPs with knowledge and skills so that they can deliver high quality palliative care to their own patients. And we wanted to increase patient access to care with improved patient care quality of life, to lessen symptom burden and improve patient care satisfaction with effective communication. And we wanted to increase the length of stay at home, particularly for patients in rural communities. As a pilot project, we wanted to test the implementation and economic benefit of a model that could be potentially scaled and offered on an ongoing basis. And I guess both Helen and I agree that this is something that really engaged our GPs and obviously engaged Helen's community as well. So we want to pursue that going forward. And we wanted to promote a shared care approach to palliative care. So across the 12 months of the grant, we held 9 sessions, and those sessions are up there and different topics at each session. We didn't necessarily have a case that aligned with those sessions, but nevertheless we did have a case that was presented at each session, and the didactic really part of those topics were presented by different experts in the field, I guess subject matters to the field. So we were grateful for Greg Crawford, Paul Tate, the social work team from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and numerous other presenters that came along and gave up their time to present to the audience of GPs. We consistently had probably about 48 GPs attend at each session, and quite a significant amount of, because this model is ideally suited for wherever you are. So we had GPs coming in from Clare, Port Augusta, Mount Gambier, Roxby Downs, and as far away as Ceduna. Whoops. Sorry about that. So just a little bit of background just with GP Partners, how we felt in the past that we have benefited South Australians in the palliative space. We've made significant strides in advancing palliative care, benefiting local community in numerous ways, despite the challenges posed by COVID pandemic, and we've achieved quite remarkable outcomes through our dedicated efforts. We have secured 3 previous palliative care grants with an after-hours medication management platform. We have developed an advanced care directive app, which we had the idea of housing that advanced care directive in an app that could be uploaded to My Health Record, and a lot more work has been done by a lot of other providers in that space since we did that project. And of course now being able to introduce Project Echo to general practitioners. So a summary of our outcomes. We felt that the key issues were identified and were addressed during our ECHO sessions to improve referral pathways, to improve collaboration in integrating care, to improve knowledge and symptom management and medication management at red flags. And that was something that was really quite highlighted by the GPs that were present online. We wanted to improve confidence in managing palliative patients at home, and that's something that quite a lot of GPs do struggle with. We wanted them to feel confident in prescribing and managing patients without having to make a referral necessarily or transferring the patient to hospital. To improve awareness of guidelines, pathways, and when and where to refer, and improving relationships and communication. And that was something highlighted, especially with our rural GPs, being able to actually talk in the echo session with Olivia as a palliative consultant and being able to put a face to a name. I think our GPs in rural remote areas felt more supported and less isolated through access to peer support and an opportunity to network and build relationships with their colleagues and special palliative care service and know who to contact to improve knowledge regarding access to resources and information, as well as improving that patient-family care experience. And a quote from one of the surveys that came back was speaking with presenters, with Russell and Olivia and other GPs dealing with the same situations and coming up with the solutions, whether it is symptom management or breathlessness, anxiety or bowel obstruction or whatever. It was really informative as well to make me aware of things that I hadn't thought about. A summary of our outcomes in quote forms. You can read through that, and I know I'm conscious of time, but one case study in particular was with a GP in Roxby Downs having issues getting direct oxygen to a specific pathway for oxygen therapy at home for her patient. And almost to the point where this GP was having conversations with the family that the patient would need to be transferred to Port Augusta. But through conversations with, and specific with palliative care specialists in that session, oxygen was made and that patient was able to stay at home and did die at home, which was just what he wanted. So there's some more quotes that are proving the success of our program. So just quickly capping on learning and recommendations, that obviously we do need to have an enhanced access to palliative care service. It's crucial to prioritise improving access to palliative care services across South Australia, including ensuring that palliative care services are available and accessible to all individuals who require them, regardless of where they are. And that's something that we all know and that's been talked about as long as I've had an interest in palliative care. We want to integrate palliative care into primary health care to be able to have GPs ready, willing and able and confident to have palliative care as part of their subspecialty, and ensuring a seamless and holistic approach to patient care, involving training and support all across the area and bringing them all together, not only with our OTs, community nurse practitioners and other health providers, but enabling them to deliver that high quality palliative care service which patients should have access to. And public awareness and education. Increasing public awareness and understanding of palliative care is crucial, and I guess your new book that's out, that's something that we can promote and will go a long way to dispelling those misconceptions and promote much more informed decision making for families and their carers. And the rest of that you can probably read through. And finally, one of the significant issues or problems, if you could call it that did result consistently from our echo sessions that our GPs did report was expanding grief and counselling service. And I know Adam alluded to that at the beginning, which is great, but we did find that particular session on grief and counselling ran probably at least 30 minutes over time, just as we were trying to explore those areas where we could look at how we can provide more grief counsellors and social workers who possess those necessary skills and expertise to support patients and their family through the palliative journey. And it's not only through that palliative journey, it's for those sometimes years after the loss of a loved one, especially if you have nursed a very special dear person to you through that palliative journey. It does take a long time for that to get to a place that you're comfortable to be able to live with that. Just a flag that GP Partners did manage the statewide GP palliative shared care program, which was a pilot that ran for 5 years, and would love to talk to SA Health about reinvigorating that with knowledge that we've learned, especially over the last few years, and certainly coming out of COVID, at how very important it is to bring communities together, and a shared care model is a good way of doing that. And then my ending for a quote, which was a little bit lengthy, but I'll leave you to read through that, and it's probably in your notes. But thank you again for having me, and I guess at the heart of everything, it is palliative care. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So a lot going on in the first session, which was all about engaging health professionals in palliative care delivery. Now we move on to the second session, which is upskilling and caring for our staff, carers, and staff and carers working in the palliative care space. So here is our amazing group of presenters. There's quite a lot here coming through, which is very exciting. So I'll hand over first now to Kirsty.
Hi, my name's Kirsty. I'm one of the clinical nurse educators at RDNS. I began this journey as a clinical lead as a result of receiving the grants for the 2022 palliative care health grants from SA Health, and also in partnership with APHN as well. We at RDNS are a nurse-based organisation which has its own specialist end-of-life nursing program. But we also recognise that the amount of care that we provide to other clients is a huge cohort, and they're not necessarily recognised as palliative as such or end-of-life. It's really, really important, and it became very evident that we were the front face through the use of our carers and our home care package coordinators and our RNs and the generalist teams, that we were missing a vital part of providing a service to our clients. So began our journey of identifying early clients who are at risk of dying or deteriorating with a non-malignant life-limiting illness. So, I can't read either. So we identified that clients with a non-malignant disease are often not identified as deteriorating or dying, and therefore not benefiting from an early identification of deteriorating care needs, escalation and palliative care. The aim of our project was to build knowledge and confidence in the early identification of the client's deterioration by providing bespoke education packages appropriate to the different scopes of the care being provided. Initially, the objective was to upskill 50 direct care staff to ensure they had the knowledge and confidence to recognise the need for early deterioration in clients and when their needs are changing, the recognition of clients who may need a generalist care approach, so not necessarily sitting in our end-of-life program, confidence to make timely referrals to receive specialist care input, and the knowledge of escalation and referral processes, including advanced care directives. The recognition of escalation in our service, because we are nursing based, is really imperative. So escalation became a really, really high focus, and making sure that we were able to escalate and promoting escalation to our external bodies so that we could provide the care we needed to our clients, making it a much more holistic approach. And also to practice culturally safe. Our education was aiming to embed a palliative approach for clients with non-malignant life-limiting illnesses, which is a really long title to say over and over again, but it is now being delivered to over 100 staff, direct care staff, in the form of care workers, home care coordinators, clinical nurses and our case coordinators. RDNS, we continue to do that by providing different types of education which are aimed at the clinical scope of each of those clinical introducing the education to each type of care provider or scope within their scope. We recognise that the connection between reporting the use of the tools that we were educating to, and that was we introduced the SPICT for All tool and some of the REDMAC framework, but we recognise that currently, at the time of beginning the project, we actually didn't have any reporting tools or any evidence that that was being used. So we recognised that that needed to be really honed in and put a reporting around that. All of the, not all of them, but the care workers were provided with a 2-hour workshop introducing a palliative approach. We really recognised that the minute you put palliative into care, it freaks people out. So we really wanted to educate to the fact that we needed a palliative approach and a change of lens, which supported an early indications of change and referral and escalation from our care workers to our package coordinators who are non-clinical. So it was really important that the palliative approach was shared and promoted and supported. Our home care package coordinators attended a 1-day workshop, and they continue to be supported by monthly meetings and the provision of resources that would support them. Our clinical nurses, so we have clinical nurses within our generalist teams who are seeing clients with palliative diagnosis, but not necessarily end of life as such. So somebody may have a PIC that's receiving chemo, they may be seen for a chemo disconnect and then PIC dressing, but not necessarily recognised as a palliative client with the palliative needs. So the aim was to try to spin that a little bit, change the lens and see if we could put a palliative approach and recognise early deterioration signs and symptoms and information into those teams, into those generalist CCs and clinical nurses that could then escalate appropriately so that we can pop the proper care in for the clients that require it. So that was based around, that was initially started by a 1-day workshop, and we've recognised that they need that to be continuing. So we've set up registered what we're calling an RN upskilling, which are 2-hour workshops, and then they're supported by our palliative care team with buddy shifts, and then that's where the competencies and the E-modules are completed and consolidated. I won't say it hasn't been a challenge to get those done, it has, but we're very passionate about making sure it continues. Our buddy shifts are set up so that our palliative care team who have a high level of skills are there able to lead the generalist staff through. And once again, just recognising the connection between the need to report, the use of the tools so that we've got evidence to support what we're doing. So as far as what we've learnt lots and we continue to learn lots. We recognised very early on that through evaluations, pre and post, that we had a really low level of confidence and a relatively broad level of knowledge amongst all our care workers, home care package coordinators and the RNs that weren't necessarily working in PAL care teams. So our aim was obviously to increase that, where we know through evaluations that it has been increased, and people are very happy to continue to be educated around that. Escalation processes, like I mentioned earlier, they became a really important part of how we taught and continue to support. from a cascading point of view, our care workers cascade up to care team leaders or to home care package coordinators who then support and cascade through upwards to the RN teams, to the nursing teams, and then the generalist nursing teams then cascade out through to the palliative care teams, and our palliative care teams then escalate out to the NAPs, SAPs and CAPs as well. And our GPs. We're trying to work very hard to re-engage with our GPs. So we've learnt that clear escalation pathways are vital, that clear communication is vital, and that it needs to be continually embedded so that our palliative approach, our palliative resources are always continuously upskilling our staff and making sure that it's contemporary and that it's actually very supportive ongoing. So we also learned that our staff were really hungry to learn more, which was great. Our future goals are to continue to embed a palliative approach to all of our clients with a life-limiting illness, especially in that non-malignant space, which is a lot of what our non-end-of-life clients are presenting with. And really just making sure that those sorts of upskilling that is absolutely optimising client wishes and outcomes. And that's us in a nutshell. But thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Javan Paras. I'm from Research Center for Palliative Care, Death and Dying at Flinders University. I would like to thank you, my colleague Christine Van Dinter, who worked with me on this project. Our research center involves and leads quite a range of palliative care and end-of-life research project and evaluation works, and also leads large government-funded projects, including Care Search, PalliAge, LDAC, and End-of-Life Essentials. I would like to also acknowledge Ghana people as the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm talking today and pay my respect to elder past, present, and emerging. I would also like to acknowledge SA Health for their funding support. Carer SA, in particular, I would like to acknowledge Mrs. Marian Lewis, who've been our research partners and provided advice all through our research project and assisted us in linking us to the carers, and indeed all study participants for generously granting their time and sharing their experiences with us. So I would quickly give a few facts and stats about carers just to highlight what we already know about our project, preliminary results. The project is still in progress. We are still collecting and analyzing data and some recommendations from perspective of the carers in our project. So unpaid carers, who they are people who provide unpaid care to family members and friends with a physical or mental health problem, terminal illness or frailty, who need help in their day-to-day living. There are more than 2.8 million carers, 1 in 9 people in Australia, which has been increasing over the last few years. Around 861,000 carers are primary carers and providing the most informal support to the family member or friends, and 7 out of 10 of them are women. 1/3 of primary carers provide 40 hours or more of unpaid care per week. And over 1/3 of primary carers have a disability of some sort, which is twice the rate of non-carers. And finally, unpaid family and friend carers saved the Australian economy $77.9 billion in 2020. So they are critical, they are important. And when you, the first thing when we want to get some information, what we do, we quickly go and Google it. And if you are a carer and you want to see and you need some information, if you just Google getting support for being a carer, a whole range of website comes up, like Carers Gateway, Carers SA, My Age Care, a whole range of websites. And if you go to each of them, you get a whole range of information about support services for carers, like respite care, home help, carer allowance, transport support, mental health support, mentoring, counselling, online courses. So all these sort of support services that you can find if you Google it. But really, what happens for the carers? So this project was basically to go and to the carers and having their perspectives and their experiences, what they think, what they have been experienced in terms of accessing to palliative and end-of-life information, resources and services in South Australia. And not only in their caring role, but those support services that they need for self-care, which is a very critical aspect of providing care and for carers. And also, as part of this project, we aim to measure the level of death literacy amongst carers and what are the key opportunities and gaps in the current support services and how these can be improved. So what we did, it was a qualitative study mainly. We interviewed with 18 carers, females, males, across South Australia. So we had 7 people from rural and regional SA and 3 from different ethnic backgrounds. And we also used the death literacy survey, which was developed by Western Sydney University and partners. And for each of these participants. And also we held focus groups, so we brought back the same carers to get together and as a group and discuss. We presented the key findings of the individual interviews, and then they had an opportunity to interact. And mainly in the focus group, we were very keen to talk more about, okay, so what's next? What do you recommend how these support services can be improved? We held one online focus group, a second one face-to-face with 6 participants, and the third one is planned for 8th of July, which is a hybrid with the remaining participants. And as you can imagine, it was extremely challenging to engage and to recruit carers in the project. We promoted this study through many different organizations and individuals and support from many different people, but and still we are trying to recruit more, but it's been very challenging that it reflects their life situation really. So what we found so far, the carers story, I guess it begins with being identified and recognized as a carer. Whether it's a self-identification, for many carers, they don't consider themselves as a carer because they are moms, they are children, they are daughters. They think this is what they should be doing, so they don't see themselves as a carer. They don't put that label, and that's why they don't look around and they don't seek any help. But also recognition by health professionals and being identified by various organizations that do provide some carer support. So we found that there are different criteria. So for some, like being a carer for a patient in a chronic condition might be different from like caring for a patient with a cancer. So that all adds to that confusion that who is a carer. And secondly, being recognized as an integral part of the care team. We had lots of comments from our participants that they didn't feel that they are part of the care team. We always talk about patient-centered care, which is important, which is good, but where do the carers sit in that care team? And lots of comments around they do need to have information about the patients that they are caring for, and they need to be involved in decision making and the care coordination. A few quotes again. I really want to go through them. What I found in my situation is I didn't see myself as a carer for a very, very long time. I was a daughter and I was just looking after my mom. People kept saying to me, you are entitled to carer allowance, and I'm going, no, that's what daughters do. We don't get the full information. We only get her version of it and only parts of and pieces of no information directly to us. I guess where you are not an official carer or a paid carer or registered as a carer, in that sense, you don't get any of that information. And in terms of like the OT and physio and all that, it's so easy for them to forget about us because we are not there when the appointments happen, or I have to take off work for every single appointment, which is not possible for me. The other areas about the knowledge of and access to information and services, there have been lots of positive and not very positive experience that carers explain in terms of poor awareness of the services, the complexity of the services, and how to navigate some positive experiences about nurses, especially and community nurses in community palliative care team being very helpful, the role that GPs play in timely referral, the family dynamics and patient disposition about things, and the most important one was the time constraint. They all simply don't have time. They are busy. They are very overwhelmed with their life, and they don't have time to search for services. And again, a few quotes about the complexity of the system, the role of GPs, and how they can navigate the system. So they all was the key issues mentioned by the carers. And the last 2 points here was access to self-care support. It is critical, but it's really at the end of their priority list. They really don't have time for themselves. And the services, the support services that they sometimes use is mainly through word of mouth when they hear from their peers or friends or families. And it does have a huge impact on their caring. It has physical and mental impact on them. The grief and bereavement support, which they talked a lot about, because some of our carers was like in the grief and bereavement period, and their access to psychologists with expertise in grief and bereavement was an issue. Access to support before patient's death, which when the grief starts, and the waiting time and the cost and affordability, they were all issues that they mentioned. We also looked at this death literacy survey, as I mentioned, which looked at the experience, practice, knowledge, and community support. This is still the analysis is in progress, so we looked at different domains, how they get access to support services, what's their knowledge, what's their skills in around death and dying and palliative care. Recommendations, so it's not in the top 3 priority, not in particular order. Number one, training and instructions for carers. Just a practical knowledge that they need in their caring role in how to administer like medications, how to do manual handling, how to control symptoms. They do need some training. That would improve their preparedness and confidence in providing care, and it also improve care for patient and decrease the strain for caregivers. So their comment was, it's great to have like some sort of training online or getting together and being thought about some of the basic and necessary things that carers needs to know, and this is what it's lacking. Secondly, number 2, peer supporting. It's really important. Informal networks, face-to-face or online support. Even these small focus groups that we held as part of the project, they felt so keen, interested, and they felt value in getting together, sharing information, and it has a very positive impact on their own health and well-being. So just finding other people going through the same experience is helpful to share information and to learn from each other and to support each other. Number 3, assistance in navigating the complex system. That was one of the major issues that almost all of the carers we talked to, they mentioned. It's some sort of model to assist in service coordination and integration. And Adam this morning talked about this palliative care navigator that we heard about this in every single interviews and focus groups. We also did a complementary case studies in one of the general practices, a single general practices that invested in a care navigator model, and how helpful they've been in providing support to their patients and the carers. And finally, the last but not the least, what we found, the major reflection from this study, I think, is for us was to value and utilize carers' expertise and skills. They have the lived experience. They've got heaps of information, knowledge. They know challenges, barriers very well. So some of the carers that we talked to, they were very willing to share their experiences to support others, particularly if the person who they cared for died, so they've got more time. But they didn't know how to contribute. Some of them tried to find some like voluntary working to share their experiences with others, but there's not a system in place that they can go to and to help others. So their knowledge, their expertise, their capability are underestimated and underutilized. Thank you. So that's it for me.
Well, good morning, everyone, and we would like to also acknowledge that the land we're on today is the land of the Garden people, and we acknowledge leaders past, present and emerging. We also want to acknowledge the importance of inclusion and diversity in our community moving forward. So our program was Viva Powell, and here's my pal next to me, Mitch Fox, who he has worked very, very closely in getting the Viva Powell program up and about. And Mitch is the Managing Director and founder of Simple Healthcare Solutions. Viva Mutual in this project really focused on the importance of advanced care directives in the disability sector, and I want to take you through some of that at the moment. So we're a non-for-profit disability service provider, and we're very much focused around employee engagement. So this project was aimed to support our clients who are living with disability that are under our care, to look at actually giving them the importance and the value of having an advanced care directive. And this project really drilled down to some of the challenges we faced and some of the challenges in this sector, but importantly also what we did was evaluate our current systems in our organisation to be able to provide learnings for other service providers in the sector, which is really, really important. And this wouldn't have been possible without actually being able to drill down and work very closely in a team environment. So our focus was really making advanced care directives as well as the importance of having these conversations in the general disability sector, an important element. And so you don't know really what you don't know. And so conducting a very thorough audit, which Mitch did with all our clients, we found out that a lot of the majority of them, well, basically 95% of them didn't actually have an advanced care directive, and it was something that was discussed briefly and left at that. So it does take a team approach to get things off the ground, and I think being able to actually bring our team, didn't realise how difficult that was going to be, getting our team internally and our nursing staff to be able to have these conversations was really quite a challenge, but we got there. And I guess starting at the very beginning during onboarding of all our clients was really, really important. So instead of allowing that conversation to sit back and go, well, look, okay, we've got a new client that's coming on board, we need to onboard them, having that as a priority at the very beginning was just as important as when you're actually assessing risk assessment for where they live. So, because once you've planted the seed there, you can go back there and have that conversation along the way. It is labour intensive. It's not easy, and it's something that you've got to work towards. And we're working on a number of areas through the support through grants through SA Health to be able to manage some of those difficult conversations that exist. So getting the message out was really important, and really working within events within our communities, but also working with our networks, groups like, for example, other support providers, disability support providers, as well as plan managers has been really an important element for us. And we are having, just plugging it now, we are having a different conversation symposium in September. So that's happening, and we're looking forward to inviting people at that. So our learnings for us was that the conversations around advanced care directives, it can't be somebody else's responsibility. As a support service provider, it's important for us, if we're doing the right thing by our clients, to actually have that conversation. Don't allow it to be somebody else, because it's always somebody else's responsibility, which ends up being no one's at the end of the day. So that was really a key learning for us. In terms of taking the time to engage is really important, and making that a priority, because I think the time constraints in delivering general disability services or aged care services in the sector has become quite transactional. So how can we actually sit back there and do more to ensure that actually it's those other things like advanced care directives, talking about chronic disease, those elements become something of a priority and higher up the algorithm. So getting in early is important, and being proactive, absolutely, including advanced care directives as part of the onboarding process. So again, while you're actually sitting back there asking all the questions and cross-checking everything with our clients, one of the things we actually is now in that questionnaire is also about around advanced care directives. And don't do it alone. It's very easy to be isolated and to think that everything is within your house, and it ain't. So that's why, for example, we've worked really, we believe in the whole, the world of collaboration, and through collaboration you can do a hell of a lot more. And so working with Mitch from the very beginning on this project has been really pivotal to actually getting the right skills in place, the right competencies to be able to tackle some of these challenges. And Mitch has done an amazing job, and I'll get him to actually talk through the next bit around some of those questionnaires that have really become insightful for us, but also to be able to engage closer with GP practices along the way, because there is sometimes gaps between where disability providers who, you know, in general, we can be quite transactional. So that's in essence. What was I going to say? There was one final bit. I was going to hand over to. Oh, it's the different conversations piece. So we are holding. We launched through the support of SA Health and Wellbeing along the way. We've been able to work with taxi a fair bit, and we've been able to sit back and challenge ourselves in terms of where do we go and how do we actually create forums that actually work. So one of them is actually called the different conversations, which is having those difficult conversations in a different way. So calling it different conversations as opposed to difficult conversations, and start to engage not just the support providers in our sector and others, healthcare professionals, but it's also involving the community and councils and everything. So that's, we've started, we've had one already. We're doing one with this subject in late September. So I'm just going to hand over to Mitch, who's going to take you through the questionnaire. Mitch?
Thanks, Arthur. I won't take up too much of the time. I will talk about the questionnaire, but I'll introduce myself as the Director of Simple Healthcare Solutions. We're a small clinical and business advisory service based here in Adelaide, but we support clients around Australia. We have a philosophy of simple, because in healthcare it can quite often be complex. And so my role in my advice and my services is to help practices in whatever element of the health sector they belong to have the data, have the information that helps them make the most informed decision they can with the tools they have with them. So having worked across general practice, allied health specialists, hospitals, health insurers, aged care, and now disability with Arthur's group at Viva Mutual, I've had a great opportunity to see different systems, services and pathways that ultimately have the same core person, the patient. So it's been brilliant to have the opportunity to work with Arthur through a number of Wellbeing SA Health activities. And one of the best things that I've been able to work with their team is to actually develop that relationship with the patients, with the clients, with the support staff, with every element of their business and the relationships that they have with general practice. So through that collaboration and through the dialogue, we've been able to identify a really simple questionnaire that allows every client, as part of their onboarding or as part of their annual conversations, to talk through what's important to them from a patient's holistic point of view, and then also what they can do about it and the steps of navigating those conversations with the general practice, the nurses and the support staff. So the survey looks simple because that's part of our philosophy, keeping things simple. And this is a word-based, this is a physical document example, but we've developed a lot of online automated tools, so that way, pending the success of our results, which are still collating at the moment, we'll be able to provide this as an online tool for wider general practice and for wider disability support providers to use. So we look forward to showcasing some of these results at a later date, but in essence, we started with probably 95% without advanced care directives to more than 50 now having completed. And we can say that that was from our original cohort at day one of the project. Viva Mutual are supporting far more patients now, and with the inclusion of their onboarding, have a greater rate of success now. And these advanced care plans and directives are not only stored on site with Viva Mutual and supported by their staff, but also shared with the general practice as well. So at any moment, depending on when that patient need arises, there's a collaboration of information and people with shared resources. So very pleased to work on this project, and thank you all for the opportunity. Thank you very much for Wellbeing SA.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kerry. I'm the Advanced Practice Consultant from Helping Hand Aged Care. We have a variety of residential care homes in our metro and regional areas, as well as quite a large home care community service program. We were very grateful to receive the grant from SA Health to be able to engage in this project around palliative care, and we titled our project Palliative Care Holistic Leaders Program. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to develop a group of leaders to really focus on palliative care delivery and education, advanced care planning conversations in our home care and residential care space. We had 13 RNs participate in a postgraduate professional certificate in palliative care nursing with our project partner, the University of South Australia, and they participated in 3 shared study days in addition to that, which they were able to hear from guest speakers to really enhance their learning and experiences. We were really fortunate that we had 1 RN from each of our residential care homes and home care participate in this program, so we were really proud of that. And they've been able to share their learnings with our staff. We've been able to improve our palliative care approach with our residents and family members, and we've been able to develop an internal communication and training tool which is currently being translated into 3 other languages of Hindi, Nepali and Filipino to support our accessible education across our very diverse workforce. We were able to develop and launch our Helping Hand Palliative Care Framework, which is really to guide our collective efforts to provide quality palliative care services to our clients through our skilled and dedicated workforce. We've also been able to commence using the PACOP, or Palliative Care Aged Care Outcomes program in our home care homes, and PACOP is a nationally designed program to optimise palliative care outcomes for residents living in residential care. It's a screening tool used for palliative care needs, and it opens up conversations around advanced care planning and end-of-life care. We knew to really measure the outcomes of our program, we needed to survey our palliative care holistic leaders prior to them commencing their course, which is what we did. But we also revisited that once they had finished their course. And what we found is a significant increase in their knowledge and confidence, their knowledge to be able to provide and discuss palliative care with residents and clients, and also an increase in their confidence in being able to provide and discussing palliative care with residents since completing the course, and also an increase in their confidence in working with families, because that's, to build a connection and rapport with families is a significant thing. Our palliative care holistic leaders acknowledge that since having completed the course, they weren't translating it into care delivery. That has really encouraged them to take on further study. It's been able to open more and proactive conversations and establish needs more quickly, and being able to highlight each resident's personal journey. And again, a quote from one of the participants: "I've been in palliative care space directly for 5 years, but the course has deepened my knowledge around the complexities and nuances of caring for those in palliative care and end-of-life care. The course provided much deep reflection and increased my passion for palliative care. In this, I share with my colleagues, family and residents. I am passionate about continuous improvement in this space and education." The experience for staff whom the palliative care holistic leaders have had the opportunity to pay forward their learnings have also shown an increase in knowledge and confidence in being able to provide, and discussing palliative care with residents and their families. And it's also improved their confidence in being able to have those conversations and share their learnings within their scope of practice. And again, a quote, apologies for not skipping the screen, a quote from one of those persons having received that education is that I'm more proactive in discussing end-of-life care with families prior to the event. We also wanted to measure the impact of our program for our families. It was really important to understand how they viewed and felt about palliative care delivery at Helping Hand. Pre-course, many of the families responded and they said they felt confused, and that unfortunately a lot of those decisions and conversations were needing to take place quickly. Therefore, they weren't able to feel completely informed and knowledgeable about what was taking place. And a quote from one of our families that participated was, "You feel a bit helpless and a bit out of control because you can't do anything about it and they can't change the situation." But post-course, families' opinions changed slightly, and although it's still a very sensitive topic with many emotions involved, but they felt that they could talk quite openly to our palliative care holistic leader, and that some nurses didn't have that skill set, but some were really brilliant. But it allowed me to connect with that person, open up and really let my guard down, which is good. They needed to be grounded and down to earth and respected, and we shared something that was profound. So I think it's about building that connection and that working relationship. Again, another quote, to be honest, I've only had one conversation that was really, that was just recently with the course participant, and I guess relief in the first thing that we actually get some communication so that we could discuss with the resident, their dad, and in front of dad about what it all meant, and that was quite emotional for them. At the pre-course, we asked families how they felt about end-of-life care and palliative care delivery at Helping Hand. Prior to the course, the majority responded they felt anxious and they weren't completely aware of the process. Helping Hand has some staff whose job it is to come and talk to families and talk to them about the resident and where the resident is at and what the future might be. And they're coming to the end of their life situation, explaining what it is and what it entails and acknowledges the inevitable outcome. But post-course, most families, although going through a difficult process, felt supported and confident that care was being provided. I feel included in the process and that my input is respected and listened to. I do not feel apprehension, and over time we have seen about 30 people going through on the floor since we have been here. The level of care around end of life is fabulous. It makes me feel confident that they are following protocols, and I'm happy with the palliative care services that I'm being offered. So what did we learn? What were our key learnings and recommendations? There is certainly an appetite for professional development, despite the demands of our workloads. We had 13 places available for our study program, and we had 34 nurses in our organisation apply. Face-to-face is important. The dedicated study days were integral to building relationships, sharing learnings and maintaining momentum. Promoting shared needs, a greater emphasis, and we need to deliver in the ways staff want it delivered. And one of the intentions of the projects was for the leadership team to share their learnings with other staff. And the evaluation shows that this was mainly done via informal conversations through site EN or RN meetings. However, staff reported that they would have preferred to learn via more formal education sessions, which will come in time as we develop our tools. Family experience is demonstrated to have improved post this project, and we need to ensure that we continue the focus on spreading these excellent learnings across more staff within our organisation. And our recommendation would be to increase the funding for our primary health networks and local health networks to partner and collaborate with aged care providers to support delivery and quality of care, palliative care and aged care. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I realise I'm standing between you and morning tea. Thanks for that, Shyla. So I want to talk about carers, because carers are really, from my perspective, for the fabric of our society and often hold together what's happening behind the scenes for a lot of people that require care. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Carers SA and the Carer Gateway, and I'll try and be as brief as I can. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge that we are on Kaurna land and to acknowledge the traditional custodians and their elders past, present and of course emerging. That statement there, anyone, anytime can become a carer, is really a foundational statement for the work that we do at Carers SA. And the reason for that is because as a carer, you simply don't see it coming. So carers often don't have that time to adjust. Something happens often very suddenly. There's a diagnosis that someone might receive. Perhaps it's the birth of a child where there's a condition that wasn't expected, or it might be an accident. And in my case, that was what happened. My wife and I were married overseas about 8.5 years ago now. And 23 days after our wedding vows were exchanged, we were involved in a catastrophic accident in northern India. And she was catastrophically injured and she now has life-changing injuries that I support her with. So my story, though, is not a unique story when you look at the statistics, and some of those statistics vary slightly from what Dr. Sarah showed you, but what we know is this is not a rare thing. There's a lot of carers out there doing a lot of work. They're often doing it unheralded. They're doing it without much fanfare. In a lot of cases, they actually don't see themselves as carers, which is what the research actually showed us. But it's something we've known for some time. One of the things that I just want to highlight is that a lot of these people are young, providing care. So we call young carers between 5 and 25. They have to grow up really quickly. They're often supporting another family member, whether that be a sibling or a parent, and they often have to give up a lot. So we have specialist programs that actually support young carers in particular because they see it through their own lens, and often they're being missed. They're often in a classroom, not being able to do what their peers do, and often missing out on a lot. So how we educate our educators to actually identify them becomes really important. You can see the number of hours that are provided of unpaid care every year. And as Dr. Sarah says, this is not just an ethical or a moral imperative, this is an economic imperative for the government. We have to ensure that we are supporting the unpaid carers out there. When we look at South Australia, these are the statistics we know of, including over 30,000 young carers between the ages of 7 and 25. These numbers, although they are big numbers, they're often an underestimate, because if you are not actually seeing yourself as a carer, then you're not going to fill out that page on the census. You're not going to fill out that survey that comes around. So we know that unpaid carers are actually all around us. So who are carers? Well, these are the categories that we use to define that question. And you can see there that an illness that is terminal or someone who has a life-limiting condition is on that list, but it also involves people living with disability, mental health, dementia we heard a bit about earlier, long-term health conditions. So we generally define that as over 6 months in length, but it's likely to be something people live with for their lifetime. Alcohol or drug-related dependence is one that often gets missed, and someone who might be frail due to age. So there's a lot of situations in which someone might become a carer, and that's why there are so many of them around. So Carers SA, we've been around a long time. Most people in this room, I imagine, would know who we are. Over 30 years. It's always been about the unpaid carer. That's our raison d'etre, that's why we're here. And really a lot did change in April of 2020, apart from our friend COVID coming along. We actually became the only carer gateway provider in this state when the gateway was launched across the country. What that's allowed us to do is to become a statewide organisation and support all of the carers that exist in this lovely state of ours. But what that's meant, of course, is that we've grown significantly, and there are always growing pains when you do that, and getting the right people in the right places, but we can support carers now regardless of where they happen to be in South Australia. So what are the services you can actually receive under the gateway? I just want to touch on each of these briefly. Really everything starts with a conversation, so that carer support planning phase is really where people enter the system. So that can be through a self-referral, it can be through a third-party organisation, which it often is. People can use our website, they can phone us. What will happen is they'll reach our triage team, and our triage team will make an assessment of how urgent that situation is for that carer. What we often see is that carers have put it off for a long time before they actually make contact with us. And it wasn't designed as a crisis intervention service. It was designed as an early intervention. But as carers, one, you don't see yourself as a carer, and that came through earlier. But secondly, you don't put your own needs anywhere in that equation. You see the person that you're caring for, or the people you're caring for, as the most important people. You put your own needs second and third, fourth, or not at all. And I think when we're having those conversations, we need people to be honest with us about where they're at and what they need. And often people are so used to wearing that mask and say, oh, I'm okay, don't worry about me, I'm fine. It's this person here you've got to worry about. But we know that if the carer isn't looking after themselves, how are you going to keep looking after someone else? So that conversation allows us to put together an action plan. We use what's called a carer star. The carer star has 7 points, it's 7 domains in a person's life that actually give us an indication of not just who they are as a carer, but who they are as a person. What are the other things that are happening for you? Do you have time for yourself? Do you work? What's your own health like? Because we know people don't put their own needs first. So tailored support packages is one of the ways we can help people. So these are small financial amounts, but they often make big differences for people. So it's very individual to the person. It has to be tied to the caring role, but it can be a good or a service. It might be the replacement of an item that is vital to the caring role. Think about white goods and that type of thing, or it might be a cleaning service or someone that comes in and just tidies the garden, because carers don't have a lot of time, and we heard about that earlier. So if you don't have time, a lot of things fall off the page. So small amounts, big differences. Counselling, we know counselling is fundamental for how people's mental health and wellbeing is supported. We really value the opportunity to give people an opportunity to take that mask off. We have our own counselling team. All they do is counsel carers. That's their primary function. So it's about giving people an opportunity to work through some strategies and actually say how they're really feeling, which they often don't. Peer support, really important peer support, because you get to meet the people that actually get it. You know, they've been through it, they're going through it, they understand what it feels like, and you can share those stories and those experiences and also those strategies. It's not about getting in a room and having a cry and feeling worse afterwards. It's actually about coming up with some ideas about how are we going to get through this. So we facilitate those through our carer connectors right around the state. We also have coaching services. So coaching is really important. It's one-to-one. It's really anything that a carer decides. Okay, so they're intentional conversations, they're goal-directed. Often there's a lot you've got to think about. And if we're in that palliative care space, then, you know, how do you prepare for what's ahead of you? The advanced care directives that we talked about, whether it's having a will, what does that person want for the end of their life? Or it could be navigating those systems that we've heard about, the NDIS, my aged care, etc. Emergency respite care is about a carer that has to step away, has no choice. Maybe because of their own health or because the caring role has become too much for them. We see a lot of people come through that gateway, and we'd like to see less people doing that and more people coming in at an earlier point. So that's what we're really encouraging. So where to from here? Talk to your friends, talk to your colleagues, talk to anyone you can get hold of, their ear, to tell them that Carers SA and the Carer Gateway is a free service. It's available to people regardless of their caring role, and it's important that we see more carers, because when you look at those statistics and you look at the numbers that have registered for the Carer Gateway, we're barely hitting 10% of the carer population out there. And we know there's a year to go on the Carer Gateway contract through to the end of June next year, and we need to demonstrate there's a need for this. We have to provide that evidence so we know funding will end up somewhere else. That's how people can contact the Gateway. It's a free call number, the Carer Gateway website, and also Carers SA's website. Thank you so much for your time.
Can I just reiterate what Stephen said? Sorry. When I met with carers, like anyone that works in palliative care, there are carers on so many layers for a long time, even after the person's died. And I actually didn't realise personally that the Carers Gateway is available for when after people die. It can be up to 2 years. There's different aspects to it. So I put that out as a bit of a challenge because we do not want to lose any money in that carers space. We know there's a lot of gaps. So think about that through your networks. How can we get them to register? How can we support them to register? The money's there, the supports are there, we're just not using it as well as we can. So just a little opportunity to flag to everyone. But let's go back to self-care and some morning tea, more importantly. Not more importantly, I shouldn't say that. So we'll just, if everyone can come back at 11:05, and for the speakers for the next session, could you come up here at 11 just so we can get everyone organised? Go out the door there and enjoy some morning tea. Thank you, everyone.